Shalom Aleichem, almost Shabbat Shalom. I want to share a thought from this week's Parshat that we're reading in Israel, Parshat Korach. A small thing that I noticed this year that stuck out, and I think there's a lot to learn from it. So, in this week's Parsha, Korach, it opens up with a very dramatic story of the rebellion of Korach and his community, that they're challenging Moses and Aaron's leadership and the priesthood that has been granted to Moses' brother Aaron. And Korach, who's also from the tribe of Levi, is challenging that and saying, what shouldn't it be for all of us? We also stood at Mount Sinai and we all heard God speak to us that the priesthood should belong to all of us. So we're going to come back to what that's really about. But after the dramatic story of Korach and the divine response that he's inappropriate in his request, then there's a long list in chapter 18 of the book of Numbers about the 24 gifts to the priests. That this is part of the establishment that Aaron and his sons and his family will be the priests, and as this symbiotic relationship between the Jewish people and the priests, that we take care of each other. The priests are engaged with otherworldly spiritual practices in the temple and in the tabernacle, and the rest of the nation will be farming and producing wealth and goods that will then support the priests. They don't have a portion, they don't have an inheritance, they don't have land of their own, that they're involved with otherworldly, and that there's a symbiotic relationship that the Israelites are taking care of them. Okay, so what's really striking in this whole story is right after that list of 24 gifts, there's a passing reference to a Brit Melach, to a covenant of salt. What's going on? What's salt doing over here? We met this covenant of salt a few weeks ago in the beginning of the book of Leviticus, where there's a commandment that on all sacrifices, on the Mizbeach, on the altar, there needs to be salt. That salt is there on all the sacrifices, and there's a lot to think about what's going over there and what salt represents. I want to think about what salt represents and think about it here in this context of Korach. So salt does two things. Salt, one, is it represents perseverance, right? Because it never goes bad, and it also is an excellent way, if not one of the best ways, to preserve other things. To put salt on foods is a way to preserve them. So salt represents this ability to litkayem, to last and to persevere. The other thing that salt represents is the unification of opposites. The Ramban talks about how salt is really the combination of fire and water, because he looks at the process of it, that the fire of the sun causes the water to evaporate, leaving the salt behind, so that salt exemplifies and represents unity of opposites. So what's going on? Let's look at the first thing that we have. The Ketav Kabbalah explains that why does the covenant of salt show up here right after the gifts to the priests? To show this, the unity of the opposites, the symbiosis of the Jewish people and the priests, is that by coming together through the salt, it represents that they're working together in the service of God. But let's go a little deeper and let's go into a teaching of the Kedushat Levi that I think is really exciting. The Kedushat Levi says that the salt here is in response to Korach and his claim and his critique. Even if we give Korach the benefit of the doubt, that it came from a high place, from a really egalitarian place of understanding that we're all together, the response says no. So Kedushat Levi says that Korach's claim that we should all be Kohanim, the Kohen represents love, represents loving kindness and chesed, this overabundance and outpouring of love all the time. And Korach's critique is that we should be living in a world that's all love and loving kindness. The response is no, that we need you, Korach, to stay in your tribe of Levi, and Levi represents Gevura and Din and restriction and judgment, because the Levis, they were the guardians of the temple and of the Mishkan. And in Korach's claim, let's all be about chesed, the response is no. We need to have a balance of Gevura, of Din, together. And that's what the salt is doing here. It's saying, the Kedushat Levi is very strong, levatel, to cancel Korach's critique and say, no, you missed the boat, Korach. We need to be in a world of balance. Now, this really reminds me of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that many of us are familiar with, that talks about machloket l'shem shamayim, that an argument or dispute for the sake of heaven. And one who is for the sake of heaven, it's sofos litkayem. It's the end of it will be that it'll last. And when it's not for the sake of heaven, ein sofo litkayem, it won't have endurance. This language of litkayem reminds me of the salt. And here we have the example that the Mishnah brings, is which is an argument that is not for the sake of heaven, is Korach. and his community that were speaking out against Moshe. So Korach, in his critique, doesn't have the ability to last, doesn't have salt in it. So the salt comes to cancel Korach's critique and Korach's claim that we should all be the same, that we should all be in a place of loving kindness. Now, loving kindness is very good, and I'm all in favor of it, but we need balance. Chevre, in today's world, there's so much brokenness, there's so much strife, there's so much struggling going on today, and it's so easy to cancel those that think differently than us and see the world otherwise. This Torah is coming to teach us that at this time that we need to understand, we can't cancel one another. We need to understand that those opposites, those differences of opinion, that we're really all connected. And that sense of respect and mutual desire to get to a positive place, that can give us the strength to embrace each other despite or sometimes even because of those differences. So I bless us and you and me and the whole world that we can find a way to be in a place of Machlokot Hashem Shemayim, and that the salt of this unity of opposites and the symbiosis, that's what can really endure, and that can be the source of the loving kindness that we're putting in the world, balanced with restriction and limitations, and we need to find this symbiosis. So please God, we'll learn how to do it better, and we'll be able to bring peace into the world. Shalom, shalom.